This is IBM Museum. This video is the long-awaited running of the system information tool on a PS2 model 77i. That's based on what they called the Lacuna planar 46 class system. And the model 77 is the bigger version, 5 slots, 5 bays. The model 76 that had the same planar is what they call the 3x3, or 3 adapter slots, microchannel, and 3 drive bays. Now, this took a little bit of work getting this to run. I actually had to go through and rebuild the system. I received this years and years ago. No doubt the original owner or the previous owner will recognize this system by the badge that's on the system. And there's a little bit of discussion on the badge, or a little bit of discovery that was done at the on the Facebook PS2 group within the last several months. And this is not a badge that went on to the PS2s. This was ultimately, and it's marked as a 50th anniversary. And for IBM didn't have any 50-year anniversaries for models that they released for PS2s. This is actually on a typewriter, and ironically, if it was left on the typewriter, that typewriter would be more of the collector's item necessarily than trying to stick it on this PS2. And it wasn't the previous owner that did this. He acquired it from a salvage yard, and they knew that he was always looking for the IBM systems and the PS2s in particular. I think that they stuck it on just to get a little bit more money out of him, to make him think. And it's a very special unit. I liked having the opportunity that I could get it from him and work with it, because it is indeed very nice. And it is in the appearance of how I received that. Most of the internals on that planar are it's the same level that I received it there. I have gone through and I did swap in a different interface for the zip drive that's in there. It's now a SCSI interface instead of an IDE model that he had in there before. But otherwise, the unit is the same as he had. Now, the planar is the same level. It has the same BIOS version, as later on we'll see. I'm going to go through and give a longer video on a little bit more of the internal details of this planar. It does have IDE on the planar. This is the Lacuna. And then it's got integrated video that's on the planar, even a socket for a particular VRAM module. There was also another media accelerator, or acted as a coprocessor in the video, called a media burst. And that plug-in, that board, has never really been observed in the wild. It's known about, but most commonly, if they have a small board connected in here, it's the VRAM module. And this is actually it has that socket 3 for even the Pentium overdrive CPUs, like this unit does. And we'll get into that with the system information tool. But this planar and riser it wouldn't run the reference diskette for me. And the planar ID is based on the riser that's plugged in for the MULs that have them. And this is a MUL 77 riser, has the rust spots and everything else. As I deal with that other video in cleaning the unit up, I'll be dealing with the rust that's inside the case. And that may have been something where something on this planar, because I tried swapping risers first with this existing planar and still couldn't get it. So I had to swap both the planar and the riser. And there may be something somewhere that I'm corrosion or something else that's made this planar to where it just doesn't want to run that reference diskette. But I was glad that we, to get the system running. All the internals I'll cover in a later video, but I wanted to get the system information tool that we could run on the unit to show. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, get the boot up screen here of it going through the memory count. And I'm booting to diskette. This is probably the first time I've run that system information tool from a diskette rather than the hard drive. Well, I guess I did for the MUL 95X. I ran the SIT from a diskette, since that's got NetWare 3.12 on it. And this has 64 megabyte of RAM. Okay, and I don't have an auto exec bat to go through and so it doesn't prompt me for the time and date. A directory listing of the diskette. So besides the SCSI level program or utility I have on here, I've got the original version of SIT, but I also have another one I've marked as SIT patch, because there was a bug that was found in the original version of how it reports the when a system has data streaming supported. And there's also a bit of a typo that was fixed in there by Major Tom. That's the wonderful guy that goes through and hosts this content, these pages. And I'll provide a link to this particular page of information to where the original version can be downloaded, and also that unofficial patch, as it is from Major Tom, that corrects those errors. Work on these utilities is always a great aspect to do. We will run the SIT patch that that's my naming. I just named this version just to have it distinguish it from the original version on the diskette. He's gone through, as we'll see, and the splash screen has changed a little bit, but otherwise SIT is visually the same as it was before. And so you did see the credits for Major Tom and him going through and listing his name on that change. So in the main system information tool, we'll go through, start on the adapter information here first. And we have the 5 slots with the MUL 77 microchannel in this case. And this adapter in slot 2 is actually what they call the sound piper. That's a sound card for the microchannel bus, and quite good sound card in this case too. So I'll show that in the later video as I go through the internals. But this system does have a sound card. If you did see the front of it, it also has that control of the volume control there by the power button and the microphone and headphone jacks on there as well. And that's from the sound card. And then the other adapter that we have present is a feature domain SCSI adapter. And that IBM went through and rebranded that later as called it the Patriot. And it's different from, the true IBM SCSI adapters that they had, but it does add that what's called narrow SCSI or 50-pin connections for typically drives, as it is on this PS2. And I've got both we'll get to the SCSI level of the system information tool as well, but that's both adapters are saying please report. They're unknown. They're not on that list of supported adapters where SIT knows what those are, and also Major Tom has gone through and he's got those pages of information as far as the supported adapters and the supported PS2 and other systems that are supported by the system information tool. Okay, disk information. We have our hard drive, and that is IDE in this case. Okay. The size. And the partition information. It's listing it as an unknown partition. It is Windows 95 on the hard drive. Okay, the diskette drive. And this is a 2.88 megabyte, 3.5-inch diskette drive. The diskette that we have in there is 1.44 megabyte. Okay. And just some of the information, I have the label here as boot disk. Okay. Keyboard information. The 101/102 key keyboards, and then also the 122 key keyboards that Host Connect keyboard are supported. Keyboard ID, standard for the 101 or 102 key keyboard. Get typomatic rate supported, set typomatic rate supported, and return to default typomatic rate supported. Memory information, the memory hardware. This system is not supported for that detection of what modules and what SIMs are possible for use in the system. There it lists the total memory that we have on the system and memory mapping. And we can use the arrow keys to page through that information. Miscellaneous technical information. Second interrupt chip is present. Real-time clock is present. Wait on external event is unsupported. Extended BIOS data area is allocated. System has a microchannel bus. DMA supports 24-bit address space. keyboard functionality call supported. Return POS data call supported. Return memory map call supported. Enable disable processor functions call supported. Non 8042 keyboard controller in system. Data streaming is unsupported. SCSI subsystem is I'm right on, and in my video editor, very hard to read this lime green background too. SCSI subsystem not present on the system board. Information panel is not installed. This is not an IML system. SCSI support is in the IML image. So meaning that if you have a true IBM SCSI adapter, you can go through and have the ability to IML, initial machine load. Mouse information. I have a mouse connected, but I don't have the driver running. So it's listed as not present. Operating system. On the boot diskette, I have MS-DOS version 6.22. Model and processor information. So the machine name is unknown, and this is a PS2 model 77i for the IDE. The processor is unknown. This has a Pentium Overdrive CPU, or Pentium Overdrive for 486 is what Intel called it. And it's clock multiplied Pentium, it's Pentium class, otherwise, in a 486 base socket with a little bit of, with the pins on that outer row beyond what a 486 CPU has. And it runs at a 2.5 multiplier internally. So if you run it on a 25 megahertz planar or motherboard, it operates at 63 megahertz internally. On a 33 megahertz planar or motherboard, it runs at 83 megahertz. And just doesn't identify it for the purposes of the system information tool. That program is not aware of the levels that it is. The coprocessor is internal on that CPU as well. So the model number is F8, and that's anything that's, from IBM went through anything that was 386SX or above. It labeled that as the F8 model, BIOS model. Submodel is a B0. Let me get my glasses on. Yeah, it doesn't look like that looks like a B on my screen as well. And that's just how they identified that Lacuna level of system. And the BIOS revision is 08. This is a flash BIOS or SurePath BIOS that's flashable. There is the revision 8, and then I believe there's also a revision 9 for these systems too. And that BIOS ROM date of March 30th, 1998. That's so long ago, but still, that is very late. That's after the PS2s were out of production. So very much a later BIOS revision for those models. System board, PAS ID, and that was that original planar that was in here that I had to take out was, and the riser combination just not reporting that planar ID correctly for the reference diskette to run. And it'd tell me to press F1 and just return the same message over and over. So the parallel and serial port information just tells you the number of ports On the Lacuna planer, it's 1 parallel port and 2 serial ports. Okay. SCSI information, and that is that SCSI adapter that's in there from Future Domain. As I said before, IBM rebranded that model in some instances and called it the Patriot. And so the list is SCSI adapter, all the little details to it. And then for the drives that I have connected, and this is the zip drive, fixed disk drive, but removable media. So that's the zip drive. All the little details to it. And where it has PUN or physical unit number, that is the SCSI ID. And it is SCSI ID 1 for that zip drive, and the SCSI ID of 2, and that's where you have to set the jumpers and the termination, all that. I have the SCSI CD-ROM is at the end of that SCSI device chain, so it's the device that's terminated as well. So there's all the little details to it. And then this last screen of the video information, it really kind of surprised me that it just says video information and just beeps at me from there of getting further details. And just it's not aware of what that planar video is. That S3 chip that's on the planar, that's a 928 from video chip from S3, and a lot of the chips they have that proto or prototype marking on a lot of the planers, but in this instance I think it's just listed as a 928 B. I mean 928P for probably that same prototype indication. But that is the system information tool as run on this Model 77. And I will have that later video that I can do soon on showing a little bit more of the internals to these systems. But that was a great video. I always like when I don't have a... it's been nice that the system didn't break for me on this video. Didn't pop, didn't short out, just ran as it's supposed to. So that's a little bit of a relief. And I finally was able to have the video of running the system information tool, even announcing that patch that was done to the program. And so that's great. I've been able to clear that aspect out of the way. If you like this video, please click on that like button. Please comment on the video if I wasn't informative enough or you'd like to cover a little bit more detail. By all means, leave a comment. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. The channel is growing in subscribers. I would like to have many, many more. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.